Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I was an assistant director in Hollywood for the better part of 8 years, and now I'm not. Today, we're talking about the television show 24, which ran for 9 seasons between 2001 and 2014, airing a total of 204 episodes plus a television film, with Kiefer Sutherland in the lead role as counter-terrorist agent Jack Bauer. At Rotten Tomatoes, the show's average tomato meter is 87%. And the critical consensus reads, in part, the series took a great concept and executed it superbly, juggling top storylines with forceful performances and a stylish, gritty look, unquote. Very positive reviews of this show, but as always here on Below the Line, we're not concerned about what the critics think. Myself, I only worked on 24 a couple of times as a day-playing assistant director, helping out with crowd control during large scenes, but I think my guests today have the show covered. First up, Nicole Burke. You started on 24 the first season as the key second AD and started firsting during the third season. Is that right?
That's correct.
Welcome to Below the Line. Nicole, in addition to 24, IMDb says you're known for Bubble Boy, Sports Night, and Ground Control. These are all pre-24 credits. What are you working on now?
I'm working on a Fox show called 911 with Angela Bassett.
Well, thanks for taking time out to join us today. Next, we're joined by Sterling Rush, who started as the on-set dresser first season of 24, shifted over at some point to props, and also worked through the end of the show. Sterling, nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Sterling, are you surprised to know that IMDb doesn't list 24 as one of your known for credits?
Not really, because I don't really go into IMDb that much. So I guess in some aspects you have to sort of prompt it and add stuff to it. I don't do that. So whoever does the crediting and how that kind of works, I'll leave it to them. I do know that on 24 there wasn't actually a credit for me, like in the whatever you call it, in the end credits. So maybe that's how they gauge it. I have no idea how that system works, but I really don't check it or update it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows how that system works. And I've said several times, one day we'll do a podcast about it. But what it did give you credit for was Vanilla Sky, Bloodfather, The Patriot, and Lethal Weapon, the TV series.
Yes, sir.
That's airing its third season. I think. Is that where you're still working?
Yes, sir. I'll be on that for the next 2 days, and then I am blissfully retired for a month.
Enjoy your time off, Sterling.
Yes.
Finally, we're joined today by Anthony Vietro, who was with the Grips for all 8 seasons of the original run, except the pilot. Now, Anthony, I know there was a little nuance about you moving around within the Grip department. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, I started actually as the rigging key and did that for 5 seasons, and then eventually moved over to production and ran the department for the remainder of the show.
So, Anthony, besides 24, IMDb says you're known for Detroit 187 and a couple of films you directed, The Perfect Leave and Collusions. Tell us a little about the directing career.
Yeah, the directing career. Actually, Collusions should be released in the next couple months. Small independent projects that really wouldn't get made if it weren't for a group of people who work in the business coming together to make them. They don't really have the budgets to otherwise, but when you get a bunch of sweat equity and a bunch of people who you've known, you're able to put these projects together. And the other nice thing is living in Hollywood and you're making independent films, you can cast people who are real actors who like your kids go to school with and various things like that. So you can pull off some stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So Collusions is actually something I'm more excited about, and hoping that, there's so much content being made, and I'm sure the other 2 guests would agree that some of the people who get hired to direct television maybe shouldn't.
More often than not.
I'll name no names.
Anthony,
So why not? Hey, man, join the club, right?
Everyone thinks it's easy to direct. I'm dealing with it right now in my show.
Anthony, I didn't realize, though, when you agreed to do Below the Line that you were going to be on a press tour, but we'll keep an eye out for Collusions.
Hey, man, give me the opportunity. Look, we're all shamelessly self-promoters, right? That's how you make a career in Hollywood. It doesn't matter if you're above, below, on
Shake
the
that
side.
butt, dude. Shake it. Get it out there.
That's how it goes.
All right, well, let's turn the conversation to 24. For any of our audience who's not familiar, 24 had a pretty unique concept. Each season ran for 24 episodes, with each episode representing 1 hour in a single day. There were multiple plot lines running through the season, but they would all be tracked in real time, finally converging, usually, I want to say, in a cataclysmic manner. Now, the show ran for 8 seasons between 2001 and 2010. There's a TV movie that aired between season 6 and 7. The show came back in 2014 for a 9th season that only ran 12 episodes. I think they had like a 12-hour gap in the middle. And they also birthed a spin-off series in 2017 called 24 Legacy that did not feature Jack Bauer and also ran only for 12 episodes. Now, did any of you work on the later incarnations of the show?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
One was in Europe, and the other one was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, yeah.
Yeah. We got offered to do the pilot, but then we found out it was going to Atlanta. I politely declined.
Yeah, I got called to do the series, and it was not worth. 24 without Jack Bauer is not 24.
Well, and we'll
Agreed.
talk some, you guys, let's come back to that. Let's talk some more about the legacy of the show. But for now, though, we'll be focusing on the initial run. Let's start by talking about the challenges that were unique to this kind of show. Now, I'll say up front, all television shows have to worry about continuity from episode to episode or, from scene to scene. But it seems like a show like this, my thoughts are that would be at another level of difficulty.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a sense, for sure.
Okay, who wants to go first on that?
Anthony, you go.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that right off the bat was different about 24, and even though, it was far from a sure thing when we started, I think we were all wondering if we were going to have jobs after the new year of the first season. But right off the bat, the show, and actually this is really more Nicole's area, but the fact that we cross-boarded episodes, which was 2 episodes at once, and year in and year out, as we came back, we went to fewer and fewer and fewer directors, which also helped the show, which made it much easier.
So there's a couple of different aspects in it. One is the idea of directors and sort of vision for the show, needing to stay consistent. Nicole, did you want to say something more about that?
I think in the very beginning, first season was definitely very difficult because we didn't know what it was. And the cross-boarding, normally in episodes, back then it was 7 days, and we would do 2 at a time. So we went to 15 days for 2. Originally, they wanted to take the show to Canada because it was a lot cheaper then, and that's how we ended up with 15 days and not 16 or 17. Kiefer decided that he wanted to do it in Los Angeles, and since he had never done television before, they were willing to take the risk. I think the coincidences of the first season through season 5 of 24 were pretty bizarre because the first episode was about a plane blowing up and counterterrorism, and then we hit 9/11, which no one had ever seen and ever thought we would see in the real world. And I remember being on set and people were crying and freaking out because people had friends in New York, and I think at that point I think we ended up finally shutting down, but
for the day
It took a half day. It was a half day.
I thought right then and there we were going to be out of a job.
I thought canceled as well.
Yeah.
And
you started making phone calls.
Right. And so what happened after 9/11, when we actually aired, they had taken out the actual shot of the plane blowing up.
Mandy blowing the door up.
Right. Correct. And we went from and back then, $2.1 million in 2001 was a considerable amount of money. They dropped the budget to 1.8, and we kind of sort of all felt like, what is this show? I mean, I don't feel like the show ever took off until we got into probably season 4. But we did such cool stuff that no other show was doing. It was and the studio was behind it. It was made it okay, we can do this. But I don't think for at least the first year we knew that we had any kind of success.
Well,
we all had growing pains, I believe, in the beginning because we're learning a new show, a new format. Stephen Hopkins came up with this concept of these boxes and all this kind of stuff, and we're like, keep everything dirty, make everything voyeuristic, and continuity. I was in charge of continuity as far as the set stuff as the on-set dresser. That was a challenge because Guy Skinner would go, I'm going to take a creeper doll and run right through this whole set. So it'd move everything. You're like, damn, now I got to put it all back. So I remember taking a digital camera and using my iPhoto to try and mass produce all this stuff because back then it was all Polaroids on rings and you're trying to use Polaroids to try to do continuity. You have a flashlight. You're like, what is that? Is that a box? What is it? And you're trying to find all this stuff. I think that was part of our learning process and the story, because it was 24 hours. And because the story was moving so fast, I feel like they blew their wad for the first 12 hours. And the second half, they're like, okay, now repeat. Give her amnesia again. Get her kidnapped again. I mean, we're like, this show, what's going on here?
Oh, God.
Kidnapped 4 times.
I forget about her all the time.
Remember?
Yeah.
I mean, Leslie Hope had amnesia for 5 hours just because they couldn't figure out what to do with her.
Well, there's also, another thing that happened, I think, right from the beginning, was that it was clear that visually, the visual language of the show, I think, was something new.
Groundbreaking.
We'd all come off shows. TV could get very stagnant, masters over overs, and a lot of coverage, and really making a show more editorially than in the production. And it was clear from the beginning of our production that this was going to be different.
For sure.
We were going to approach it differently, and I would credit a ton of that, obviously, to Steven, who, even though we had probably more visiting directors that first season than any other season, he was in there and in the mix and writing the language as we lived it, and then it really became a thing. I think it's still, to this day, can be credited as one of those shows that like it, and even though ER was probably a little bit before it, but that the point of view of the camera,
being a voyeur,
the voyeuristic nature of the camera was different than it had really been previously, and it really helped with the linear that time, right? It echoed the storyline and how time was of the essence, because it was always
energy
moving
and kept moving forward. Yeah, and everybody sort of.
The other thing also is that we had, if we go back to season 1, if you took a crew list, which is unheard of these days, people don't even last 2 episodes anymore. We had like 75% of the crew from season 1 until we finished
Easily.
And now there is no loyalty in television, let alone anything else in the world. But I think that's what also made it so great, is we all grew together as the crew, and we all understood what everyone's jobs were, and there was no, and we just had a great time.
I grew up on that show.
So did I.
I was a funky
all
little
3 of us did.
24-year-old. I mean,
Well,
I was 27 when we started that show.
You guys, let's talk some more about that, because I know initially the first season was planned for only 13 episodes. At some point that changed, maybe once the ratings started coming in. You guys mentioned earlier 9/11, folks starting to think maybe they weren't going to stay. How does a team really form the kind of connections you guys do when, particularly in the beginning out the gate, a lot of your jobs seemed at risk?
I think that back then TV, there was, right now there's like 400 television shows. So people are going from show to show. Back in 2000, work was in Canada, and most of the work was in Canada, and there wasn't and there wasn't anything here in LA. And I think people were willing to stay and see what happened, because there wasn't really that much. There wasn't that much other work, and there
wasn't a risk to stay, because there was a risk to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it. Also, I think the age group that most of us were like at least the crew, late 20s, mid 30s. Or now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm almost in my 50s, and I'm still one of the younger people. It's like the younger generation has dissolved, and they go from show to show, and there's no continuity or commitment with the younger generation. It's like they get bored, they move on.
Yeah. Well, they're also not coming up in the business as they used to. There's a lot of older people on set. There's no young bucks coming in their 20s like I did.
Right.
Everybody wants to do either.
Everybody wants to direct.
Right. Jump back to the top. They don't want to. They don't want to
do the work.
Put the work in. Yeah.
Learn a craft. The other thing.
I learned everything on 24.
Just starting the show. I remember my first meeting with our first production manager, a gentleman by the name of Robin Chamberlain, who was, like I said, a stellar human being. And there I was, like 27 years old. I had been working in television. I'd had an opportunity to be a key on a smaller show, but not a tremendous career by any means at that point. And walking in and sitting down with them and having the first thing said to me was, I'm not hiring you so that I can do your job. I'm hiring you so that you can do your job, which is a different approach. Right from the beginning, it's like, look, we're all gonna do this together, and your opinion matters. And I think more than anything, when anybody of any level in their career is told your opinion has a place here, it's part of a chorus, but we're going to listen to it, and we're going to take that as being important. It changes everything. It crystallizes the moment where you're like, oh shit, this is different.
I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do my job and enjoy it.
It was and Cyrus, who was our producer at that point, echoed it. And so when you start that way, and you pretty much bring in people who are going to buy into that, it's a different show. And you go from having sort of a fear-based management style, which is what a lot of producers do. It's like this parental bullshit, like, we're going to micromanage you. We're going to tell you what you're doing wrong. It was the antithesis of that. And it was at a point with, like you said, a bunch of younger people who we knew enough to know it was different, and that this was going to be something that was worth being around for, and I credit that with being a huge part of why people stayed, because it was a different environment in that way.
And we actually, we came together pretty quickly as a unit and sort of figured out who does what and where, and sort of let everybody do their thing. So there was never like a hierarchy, like if I do this to move up. It was like, no, this is our job. Let's have fun. Let's do it. We all did it with a smile. The hours were at some points, half the season's at night. So as an AD, you got to figure out how to make it where it's not all nighters. There's always what I call the hell week, which is like 1 week of just all nights to get the stuff.
We always had them.
For the most part, it was like splits, and being a young single guy, I didn't care. I was married to work. I enjoyed being there.
Yeah, nobody. It's interesting when you look back and think about it. No one really complained. Everyone just did what they were hired to do. It was. They don't make shows like that anymore, and they don't make crews like that anymore.
No,
I'd put our crew up against anybody right now and say we can make anything.
Well, essentially, by the time we got to season 3, we were essentially making $100 million feature
every 14 days.
We were doing, and that's what the season was, and that's what it needed to be, because it was also a game of escalation, right? Every season had to have a little more. You had to push the envelope a little more. There was no, obviously in the writers' room, they weren't going to rest on the laurels of last season, and so that just became different. But it really does. There's two things that happen. There's the show that gets on screen, which is what the audience gets, and then there's the show that we all live. And if you're living with producers who want to make it difficult because they feel that that's a management style, you don't stay there. But I found that never to be the case with 24.
I agree. I loved it.
Well, with 24, it sounds like you guys had a lot of that bonding out of the gate, but did the teamwork evolve any over the 8 seasons?
For sure.
Something about getting used to the different roles and such, but I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Well, I can speak for all 3 of us. We all moved up in this world. And I think the reason why we became such good friends and became like a family was Kiefer Sutherland. He made it a point that on Thursday nights, we're going to go to TGI Fridays, have one drink with me, and let's hang out. And so that started we're no longer just like at rap, you run home. We actually hung out together on a social level, which was fun. Then you had John Cassar, who came in season 2, and we had him who would have these Friday night parties. You go to his house and hang out and just sit down and unwind for the week. Those moments there were fun. Those were I remember those parties the most, just hanging out and unwinding from the week.
Even the week where you're shooting all, like when you're going home at 3 a.m. or 4 in the morning or 5?
Not as much as those, early Fridays more so than not. But I mean, we also
we'd keep the bars open.
we would also go to hotels and spend time in San
Yeah.
Francisco, and we would go down there, and after work we hang out in the back of the truck for half an hour and just socialize. And it was never like, get off the clock, get out of here. It was like, I mean, the first season of 24, our transpo team lived on the lot. So
pretty much
they had like 5 gooseneck trailers out front next to the working trucks, and those guys lived in these trailers. Bird and Booger and all those guys, they, pretty much were one of the best transpo teams I've ever worked with before. They lived on the lot. On the weekends, they would do maintenance stuff, and they got more productivity out of those guys because they were always on the lot. They never left.
Another thing that was, I think, a unique thing to the show that helped create this sense of family was that it was a show that was produced in a warehouse kind of far away from the studio itself, right? From, it was a Fox show, so all those guys down on Pico, it was kind of away from there, and you weren't, like I work on a show now that's on the lot at Warner Brothers, and you walk on the lot, and you have the lot politics, and then you have the executive politics, and you see other shows. And so the idea that maybe I don't really like this show I'm working on, but there's 8 other shows here, and maybe I'll find a way into one of those. We were on an island.
Yeah, we're a self-contained unit.
And it really created a sense of unity, because if I'm at Warner Brothers and I need something and it's grip related, there's a whole apparatus there. But if I'm, half hour, 45 minutes away from most of the resources that are so abundant in Hollywood, and I need something, and I don't have it all. I need Sterling to help me out, because he's got sort of the last 10% of what I need at his disposal. Right. I'm going to go to him. Or construction was a key element, and Phil Stone, who was our coordinator. Like, we had to rely on each other, just simply because we were, on average, I mean, depending on traffic, we were on average half an hour away from that like easy phone call. And so that creates, I think, right from the beginning, more unity, because you're crossing over with each other, and you're relying on each other. And so it seems like a minor thing that we were out on this island, but I do think it gave us the environment where we had to do these things together in a different way than you find, like, if you're working on a studio lot.
Well, Nicole, I want to ask Nicole specifically. Nicole, did this extend to a quieter crew? Like, did they help out the assistant directors in the same way, where they were quieter on set and, would give you the lockups you need? Because I think that's been a rare thing on set. And I'd like to see a team that really came together around that.
Well, I think the thing is, when you work with Kiefer Sutherland, there is nobody talking. It was one of the best things that made my job so much easier. And like on my show now, I now say I'm doing
private
a Kiefer Sutherland. No, I don't say private rehearsal. I say I'm doing a Kiefer Sutherland rehearsal on my show, because no one knows how to be quiet. So when I'm doing a Kiefer Sutherland rehearsal, that means everybody's outside waiting till I'm done. The actors have the set. Kiefer is amazing because, he was the team leader. He brought 120% every day, which made all of us give 120%. I rarely ever had to tell anybody to be quiet. The one day I'll never forget, one of the camera assistants was talking, and I told him to be quiet, and he continued to talk. And then Kiefer got in his face and said, "Did you not hear her? She told you to stop talking." I don't think that guy spoke for the rest of the day, but it was an etiquette thing. And I still live by that, by those private rehearsals. Sterling and I went to do Kiefer's other show, Touch, and I came in like halfway through the first season, and I went to a private rehearsal and kicked everybody off stage. And the PAs are like, "Wow, why didn't somebody do that before?" I go, "Well, no one called and asked." I mean, normally now when Kiefer does a new show, I usually get a phone call of how to deal with him. He's super easy to deal with. It's just, bring your A game.
Well, and there was a respect. And again, there's Kiefer, and I go back to Cyrus and even Joel and Robin. Kiefer, when it was his set, it was his set. But when it was your set, it was your set, and they got the fuck off the set. Now you break rehearsal, first team stands around, they want to talk, they want to chit chat, they want to bullshit. And you know, the AD's looking at me going, "Are we going to start lighting?" I go, "Nope, I'm not going to start lighting. I'm not going to do anything until they get offset." So the respect was always mutual from the very beginning with the conversations with Robin, with Cyrus, with Kiefer. It was mutual. So when respect is mutual, it's easy. You know,
I'm still training my crew. It's like I have, you know, I'm on a firefighter show, so there's like 8, 9, 10 people in every scene. As soon as we cut, I'm like, everybody, get the fuck off my set. I mean, they now know it. I can look at them with almost like a Kiefer look. It's like, that was your time. Now it's lighting time. My DP will not do a thing until everybody is off of his set.
As you should, because you know.
Correct, but
there's equipment's coming in, lights coming in.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's the respect and the respect.
That's the hard part.
I mean, everybody talks about the crews being loud, but it's respect. You know, if a writer wants to tone a scene after the blocking, no, you can't. How are you going to respect that? It's so hard because look, you had your time. You should have done that. You should have been prepared, right? So, you know, people don't have the respect anymore. It's the same, you know, I mean, my crew knows because again, I learned with Burke and Sterling in a place where there was respect. It's like, guys, you know, it's not ours. Go away. And these days also the phone, right? The phone is just, the cell phone thing is insane. But at the very least, I tell them, look, you want to be on your phone? Fine. Go to the truck. Go away. You know, because if we're here, totally if we're on set, the phone. It's crazy, right? I mean, it just what it does to this process, what it's doing to our minds is pretty scary.
It's bad.
You know?
I think social media and everything is sort of taking control of everything. So I remember just looking at our set last week. Everyone, if you look around, everyone's 2 feet away from each other, but on their phones and not talking.
Lit up.
They're just gone.
So I mean, it was, you know, I mean, I think if you were to transport our experience 15 years into, you know, 20 years now into today, it would be different. I mean, it was unique to the time. It was a lot of things that were unique about it. The group of people that came together and the way they wanted to do things, the way they wanted to treat people and be treated. You know, it was unique in that regard. You know, it wasn't just what was on the page. You know?
Now, what was it like for you talked about 75% of the crew stayed through. I don't know for sure on the actors, but there were actors that ran multiple seasons as well, and so understood how things were running. What was it like for the new folks who would come in, either at the lower levels because you guys had moved up, or actors who had different experiences on other shows?
Your A game. Bring it, because Kiefer's going to come in and do 4 pages cold. Know your stuff. Same with the crew. You come in and you sort of watch and see how things are run, and then, you know, if there's a question, people would go, you might want to do this, and, you know, be constructive criticism. I think if actors got out of hand, the unique part about 24 was if you became a little difficult, guess what? You might get hit by a bus tomorrow. The writers are 4 feet away. This guy's like, go tie my shoe. Watch the writer goes, oh my gosh, you got hit by a bus. You know, there was the only person that was probably safe was Kiefer. Everyone else, you know, to make the story move forward or to give it some drama, you got to bring your A game every day, and otherwise they'll write you out, man.
But if you look back at all of the heads of departments, Anthony might be the only one that actually moved up to key grip, but the DP was the same, the operators were the same, the gaffer was the same. Randy came in, right?
Randy came in second.
Makeup, hair, wardrobe, everybody stayed the same. It was anybody that was coming in new after season 2 was not a head of a department.
Right.
Everybody was pretty much stayed. If you look at all the heads,
and he moved up,
right?
So that's kind of the same,
right?
Same,
but
same
everybody either moved up, but nobody came in at a top position the whole entire time.
Exactly. No department replacements kind of thing. It was
correct.
A department replacement who might have come in with their own ideas about how their department runs and integrates with the other departments. You guys didn't suffer any of that over the course of the 8 seasons.
None whatsoever.
It's the same group of folks working together.
No, and even though I moved up as a department head, my position from the beginning, our show also had a huge off-production footprint, right? Because we were dealing with the storyline and what it dictated in terms of day or night, and the pace with which we worked. We had to walk into sets that were within a half an hour of shooting. We weren't a show that could come in and do a 4-hour lighting setup, or when we were trying to we did a lot of night, day for night. So in the early years, my role running the grip department's part of that prep and strike. A lot of the show lived in that space, and again, this was a show that prep was a big part of the show, and how we were able to move in and out of spaces, and again, because of the cross boarding. So, it was a show that needed people to communicate and needed people to be proactive. And it happened because there was an amount of respect. And as Rodney Charters, who was our DP, who, is an enigmatic little figure that we all love to death.
Crazy Kiwi.
But he also, unlike a lot of DPs, he was not a micromanager. He wanted you to sort of bring your talents to bear, and gave you the space to do it. And then obviously Michael Click was a huge part of the entire process.
Michael Click, what was his role? Sorry. Who's Michael Click was his role?
He started as a first AD and ended up as a line producer, right? He went sort of through the whole thing. But was also someone, probably one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Just knew how to bring people in and get the best out of them.
He also, which I take with me all the time when I hear people bickering about minutia. We're here to put it on the screen, and the money is supposed to go on the screen. And Michael would always say that. So, I think I can talk for the three of us, is we've taken our whole experience on 24 to all of our shows. And I know for me, I've left quite a few shows because I was spoiled on 24 with just the A game, everybody brought their A game, and we were like the Super Bowl champs for 8 years.
Yeah.
And then you go to the other shows, and a lot of whining, a lot of this, a lot of that. Why do we have to do this? Well, you know what? You got in the wrong business.
I look at you could probably look at the shows you're working on now. I look at scenes that we shot on 24 that were like pretty, really big, stunt heavy, action heavy scenes. We do them like 4 or 5 hours. We're taking full days now to do these things. We're like, I go on 24, this would have been shot already.
Right.
I see that the pace of the shows is gotten really slow, and there's a sort of a lot of this wandering around, as opposed to like, let's get this thing done and go home. I want to have dinner tonight with my family.
Right. I also think that's Kiefer. We haven't really worked with him. We did touch, but I don't count that as working with him, of what it would be like if we were to come together with him, because there was no messing around. There's I work with an ensemble cast that's fantastic right now, but when you work with an ensemble, there's not one voice. When Kiefer, like you said, anybody could be killed off if you weren't Kiefer Sutherland. And, it's not like that anymore. I don't know if there's all these other shows are ensemble cast.
Well, speaking of the cast on 24, you guys have talked about Kiefer setting the tone on set. Were there any other actors that over the course of either one major season or several seasons also made an indelible impression, either on the crew or on the direction of the show?
Well, yeah, Dennis Haysbert, loved him. Michael T, Mary Lynn.
Yeah, Mary Lynn was probably what I would say probably second to Kiefer in terms of
absolute
presence, right? She was there for a while. I guess Cuthbert, but I don't know. She was a kid too, so
grew up. Yeah,
have the impact, but it had a singularity. It's tough. There were even those conversations where we talk about the ratings, and it's like if Kiefer was in 68% of the scenes in the first half hour, that the number of viewers that stayed for the second half hour was higher, and if it dipped below 50%, they lost viewers in the second half hour. It was you know, it was so on
Calculated.
that character and what he brought to it, because he really did, you know, he represented, you know, you hate to say things like he was the perfect character or the perfect actor, but the vulnerabilities that the character had and the way he played it and the way he made his decisions and the way Kiefer gave life to those decisions, people watched it and went, I'm not that guy. Sometimes I wish I were that guy. That guy does shit that I wish I could do, right? I mean, it had all those elements. So, and it was one of those shows that didn't really become a soap opera. Every other show becomes a total soap opera, right? Who's kissing who's mad at who. It wasn't that. It was, what's the threat? It was pragmatic. I mean, and so it gave the audience something different, and he did, you know. I mean, for a guy who's not the biggest guy, was never, you know, he's not muscle bound or any of those things. Motherfucker was tough.
He brought it, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know.
They don't make him. I mean, he made, I feel like he made the experience of 24 what it is. You know, it's weird to be almost 20 years later, and I always go, of all the shows I've done in the last 10 years, I still always go back to 24. And when I run into crew on my show, like I have a couple people on my show now that are crew, and we took a picture, and John Cassar was on the lot, came by, and unless you were on it, you have no idea what it was like. And people are like, how did you do that? It was when you say it was 1 in a million, it was 1 in a million to be able to be part of such a groundbreaking, amazing show. I mean, I learned everything I could have learned. I mean, everyone always goes, how do you do action so well? It was called 24. I didn't just, you do it. You do it by learning it. You just don't all of a sudden go, oh, I'm great at action. No, we did every action sequence you could possibly imagine for a TV show.
And we learned it, you know. I mean, look,
yeah.
Anybody would be sort of dishonest if we said, look, from day one it was perfect.
And growing pains.
We had growing pains. I mean, yeah. I remember those first couple episodes, you know, were huge, and you know the hours were long, but what was true right from the beginning was, you were told, at least I was, and I think the experience was similar, was, look, you're here to do a job. You're not here to be told how to do the job. Bring your A game, because we want it. And that was, I think, right from the beginning. And again, I think it was, you know, Kiefer, but also, you know, I mean, Cyrus, he'd ask some of the strangest questions in meetings, and they make you laugh, but then he would back it up with making sure that it was handled and people were doing their jobs. And again, because everybody was given a voice, you know, when you do action, people get scared because they're scared of the responsibility. But if you're told, bring the responsibility and be part of it, it's much less scary. And you realize that the scenes, an action scene and a scene at a dining room table, are essentially the same. You have to film the elements so that you can make the scene. And so, you know, we were given that. Plus, we had great effects. We had a great effects team too, that brought everybody, and they weren't cowboys, and they didn't try to make it something that they wanted everybody to understand what was going on. So I think there was a uniqueness to the department heads that people weren't afraid to include everybody, and that's a big difference.
I think one department that changed though quite a bit. Thinking back, what Nicole said was stunts. Think about it. Dono,
yeah.
Dono, Maddie. I mean, that kind of that kept changing.
It was the Emmy curse.
People would come and, sorry guys, you mean people would come and go as far as the stunt department?
Every season, right?
Yeah, until Jeff came in season 5.
And then Caliente stayed from 5 to the end, but until then it was, you know, we kind of.
But effects-wise, it was the Blackwells.
Blackwells, yes. You know. Stanley Scott, yeah.
The cool thing about the Blackwells, though, for effects, is that they asked questions and they brought everybody together, and we would have meetings and we would see the process.
Yeah.
And now we don't.
Well, they don't anticipate like they used to.
Right. I'm doing big stuff on my show, and it's not it's not a camaraderie of everyone wanting to play. It's like we're all on the same team, so let's play together in the sandbox as well. And we, from the beginning, it's just, I think it's a they don't make it like that. And I call it luck. There was a lot of luck and some skill, and they just don't make it like that anymore.
I'm curious as a follow-up for all of you guys working on shows today, the difference between, or where the balance is between practical and visual effects with these high action sequences. I know a lot more now, visual effects are coming in and doing stuff that before 10, particularly 20 years ago, we were doing in more practical terms. Are you guys seeing a transition of that? Is that part of it, or is it really just the crews? Like, there's two sides to this.
If you look at the gunfire on 24, we had full loads, automatic machine gun fire with cars exploding with cannons and big flames and blowing things up, and which is a safety element that we all kind of all of us together took upon ourselves. Anthony, Nicole, myself, stunts, effects. We all sort of got together and said, how can we make this really big, really safe, and kick some ass? Nowadays, no one fires full loads anymore. It's either solid plug or quarter load. And then if there's ever a question of what should we do, we'll put it in post. So the gunfire is now this crazy, weird, like triangle flash that I can tell on camera, like, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. It takes away from I think as an armor, it takes the action away from the actor, because they're having to like fake this whole gunfire, and half of them who don't know how to shoot a gun, it looks really wrong. It looks forced. And I think if you have an explosion that's this fake fire and the actor has to react to an explosion and it's just a lighting effect, and they go, oh, blow up, versus an actual cannon going off and a car exploding, your reactions are different.
So this last week, we're up in Big Bear shooting, and the actress didn't want to be around a real gun. So we brought an airsoft gun. And I'm like, okay, this is like cops and robbers. And the prop guy goes, I bet you Kiefer never had an airsoft gun. And I said, Kiefer only shot full loads.
Yeah.
And it was just like, we actually did real squibs, which was pretty remarkable. But it feels like the safety aspect of what's going on. I mean, we did such great stuff on 24, and I felt like it was always safe. There was maybe one or two times when we did helicopter work where I was like, whoa, that was kind of close. But I never went.
But the pilot, you always trusted the pilots. I mean, the Timboros or whoever it was, you just, there was a trust.
Correct. And there's not like right now we're getting ready to do some plane work on my show, and I was like, we're going to use John Tempborough. Like, that's the bottom line, or I'm not going to show up. I trust this guy. I'm not going to go with some newbie. So I think we had a lot of trust in one another. We always had each other's back. And looking back, I think the only like real accident I saw in 24 was, Mr. Heron not paying attention and falling through a floor.
Yeah, there
wasn't an accident.
It wasn't an on-camera accident. Yeah.
Right. Like nobody got hurt.
Yeah. Well, and the cougar.
Cougar is one of the items that people talk about even now on 24. What happened with this cougar?
So what happened was Alicia Cuthbert was going to meet a cougar in the scene. You've heard this, the saying, jump the shark. Well, we jumped the shark. All right. So our stunt coordinator at the time was Greg Barnett, and they went to go introduce the cougar to Alicia. Well, no one she had just finished eating Cheetos. So the cougar started licking her hand, and she got scared. So she moved her hand, and as she moved her hand, the cougar got scared and bit her. And she had never seen her own blood before. So she basically passed out. So nonetheless, that was a wrap on the day. It was just one of those things where you're just like, okay, why did we have to introduce the cougar to her? They weren't even in the same frame.
While she having Doritos.
Okay, so my thing now is I just worked with a tiger on my show, and they wanted to incorporate the actor, and I go, what for? You don't need to incorporate that kind of an animal with an actor. Just
they don't need to
edit
meet.
it together. They don't need to meet, exactly.
Well, I'm curious, you also talked earlier about sort of learning on the show and developing, having all that time with the same team. What are some other scenes or memories where things were challenging? Maybe they didn't go exactly the way you expected, where you guys did learn a lesson, if you will, as far as the challenges on 24.
I would say we started season 5, the opening of season 5, which to me was my favorite season and maybe my favorite episode. But I don't know if you guys remember, we were downtown, and they were trying to kill all the lead actors as part of the story. And the guy comes running. He's running, and all of a sudden he's out of frame. And John Cassar goes, "Where the hell did the actor go?" Well, he's on the ground. He had tore his Achilles as we were shooting, and he was the whole day's worth of work. So John, I'll never forget, John pointed at this new kid who nobody ever met. He was like the loader, camera loader. And he pointed at him and he says, "You over there, come here." Yeah, he goes, "Come here." And well, John Sharp, the first AC, goes, "You can't have my guy." And he goes, "If I want to continue shooting today, I'm going to have that guy." And so they sent him to hair, and he shaved his head. He got dressed, and he did all of the running for the actor for the rest of the day. And we shot him like neck down, and then the actor stood on one foot and did all of his dialogue.
I remember that.
Eric,
that was the
we called him Running Eric, and he got his SAG card. And when we aired the episode, because it was our first episode, we always aired the first episode for the crew. Like, everyone just applauded. We wouldn't have been able to get through the day, let alone the episode.
I think for me it was Ontario Airport. You remember Ontario Airport with all the terrorists and bomb vests?
Yes.
And then President Bush flying Air Force One into that airport. Secret Service going, "Who's in charge of the guns?" I walk over. The guy's like, "If one of your guys walks outside this terminal, my guy's going to drop to a knee and shoot him." I was like, and he goes,
"It was a brilliant stroke of scheduling. Let's go there that week."
Yeah, I've got 15 background with bomb vests and AK-47s, and then Secret Service is like, "Your guy walks outside to get a cigarette, he's going to die." All right, guys, background. Very important. Very important. Do not leave the terminal. I don't care if you have to use the restroom, you deprop. And everybody's really good about that. But that was one of the moments where it was very stressful because I had a Secret Service liaison following me all around all day. And you're just waiting for some crazy background guy to go, "But my girlfriend called." And you walk outside and damn, he's dead. So that's a bullet.
Yeah, I think for me, sort of the pinnacle of the show, maybe not our best season, but the finale of season 6, which was a pretty big sequence of this oil rig and Jack meeting his father in the oil rig and it blowing up. But the finish of the season for me was about 60 straight days, because we built this sequence in 5 different locations between a practical oil rig, an enormous set at a studio down in Downey with a water tank.
Which is not there anymore.
Which is not there. When we went to a refinery, and we did elements at a refinery. We went to like 5 different places. You watch the scene; it's seamless. I mean, if you know exactly what it was, which the 3 of us do, you can go, "Yeah, I know where that was, and that was," and they weren't right next to each other. But to the audience, creating a seamless sequence like that, but how much work went into it, and it was an intense process. Lack of sleep, but really, asking myself the entire time, like, this is a TV show. This isn't what TV shows do.
Yeah, and then we did the real rig.
Yeah. I remember getting the boat out there and the helicopter coming and the gunfire on that thing. I remember doing all that, hiding under a tarp, reloading mags.
Or watching crew members swing onto the platform who really should have.
We almost lost one of them. Yeah, almost lost one. I'll never forget that night going, "This is pretty cool. I'm on a oil derrick in the middle of the Pacific. This is kind of fun."
Yeah, it was amazing. And you got to do things like that. And again, when you do things over time and the trust builds and the familiarity builds. For me, and I think for the rest of us, you got to be in meetings you wouldn't have otherwise been in. You got to be in places you wouldn't have otherwise been in, just because the leadership said, "Well, no, everybody come in and get in on this conversation because it's going to help us all." And so the department heads, for sure, and most people, more so than any other show, really understood from beginning to end what the process was. And also because of the physicality of the writer's room and editorial and everything being in the same place, it's like, come in the writer's room and look at the sequence they're building, and let's talk about how we're not going to get totally screwed by this sequence, because they're not going to want to write it out, and I'm not going to get the money to make it the way they want to make it. So let's get in early. And the conversations were always alive and moving, and it wasn't, I've worked on shows where information becomes a commodity, right? And producers are afraid of giving information because they think it's going to get ahead of them, right? They think if I give this information and it's not 100%, that somehow it's going to come back on me,
right?
Which is true of if you're dealing with department heads who feel that they have to prove something. None of us had to prove anything. We just had to do our job. So if information came down and you reacted to it, and the next day it changed, and went, okay. I mean, Burke and I used to sort of see each other every morning and go, it wasn't what's changed. We changed it to, hey, what hasn't changed? Right? That was like, because it was constant change. But if you had the information and you knew what, and again, going back to Click, put it on the screen, it's about telling a story, right? It's not about my budget or this amount of manpower or this amount of this or that. It's about making the show. It's about telling the story. And people came to the show as storytellers, whether you were a grip, a camera operator, makeup, sterling and props. We're all storytellers, which is the point, right? A lot of people in this business it's just a business, right? And they're not really interested in telling a story. 24 was different. It was a group of storytellers, and we were given a voice, and that made something totally different. I think time and again.
To Anthony's point earlier, having everything in one spot kept the machine moving. Versus I'm working at Warner Brothers. You have writers a half a mile away. All the departments are so far away, so information doesn't happen like it should. I know from Nicole being a first AD, if something came up in one of her meetings, she would immediately text Randy and say, you might want to look into 50 background, not 20. Like, information just flows. Nowadays, people expect you to get the information. They don't care how you got it. And everybody has like secrets. I feel like people don't talk about, if someone comes up in like a stunt meeting saying, there's going to be a big old trapeze rig, they don't tell Anthony that they need to get a trapeze rig started. You just have to find out on your own by someone saying, oh, do you have the trapeze? And you're like, what do you mean? What trapeze? What are you talking about? It's the communication, I think, is not as free flowing as it used to be, as far as us on set. You guys agree?
No, I would agree. I would agree that the transparency was huge. I mean, one thing that producers are so tight about, right, is telling you, budgetary things. On 24, you'd walk in and Click would say, look, I got this amount of money to do this. And he'd tell you what the money was. And then, but then it was real information, right? It was, okay.
It mattered.
Yeah. And it wasn't guesswork, and it wasn't, you just knew. And so it was a lot more like a household. Like, all right, I got to fix the roof, but I can't fix the roof with 50 grand because I don't have it. I got 15. Right. And so it wasn't guesswork. You weren't looking for the boundaries or anything because it was given to you, and it was given to you in actionable information, and I really credit that, it's confidence. You credit the confidence of the people in the leadership roles to not be afraid to tell you. So many people think that leadership is dissemination of information and how you do it, where it's not. It's like, I'm going to give you the information, and then we're going to talk, and I'm going to tell you what I think is right or wrong about what you're bringing back to me. It becomes conversational, it becomes participatory. Where today, it's in a lot of ways, and a lot of producers, especially the younger ones who look at line items, right? They're not even storytellers. They're just looking at line items. It was not that way on 24 ever.
Yeah.
It was information flow.
Yeah. See, I still get out the same amount of information, but what they do with it is completely different. It's like, if I were to call Sterling and say, I need 2 bottles of wine. I need a red wine and a white wine. You don't have a script. This is what I need. This is the scene. This works tomorrow. Because I work on a show where we don't get scripts. The hesitation where if I told Sterling 10 years ago, he would already go out, have bought them, have had them labeled and ready to go. But now everyone's so afraid to spend any money or to make a mistake that nothing gets done anymore.
True. We've hindered ourselves. in a way, but 24 being its unique world. I mean, we could also anticipate stuff. Like I would go, I'm gonna need this, and I need these background to have this. I'll text Nicole. Can we have the background bring their own backpacks? Anthony, I'm gonna need help getting here, and it was just sort of, we understood what we needed and what we anticipated, what we didn't need to get ahead of the game. That anticipation has gotten stifled because of, like Anthony said before, people producing through fear as opposed to producing through, I hired you to do a job, do the job, and then we'll go from there.
You guys are depressing me a little bit. You don't know you can get out of the industry.
Wait, what?
That's the end game.
Wait,
That's
wait, what?
You worry about that one. I got 8 more years.
Look, it's still I still pinch myself every day being on set, and I'm partially a carny, which is
Nice
a lot of what I do, but we're telling stories, right? I mean, think about what we do, and it's a good business to be in, and we certainly we've been afforded amazing opportunities, and so even I think the challenge is there's been, because film business is essentially like a cottage industry, right? It's not, we make a product, but it's not like we're not like the car industry, so it's a cottage industry. So I think we think of it as being more unique than it is, but it's the challenges, the same challenges that all things that society faces, the cell phone or the lack of personal responsibility. But at the end of the day, I'm making a television show, right? And yeah, I'm giving people through this group effort something so they don't have to deal with their lives because they want to enjoy it, which is cool. But what a great thing to be doing, telling stories, making shows.
I think
I play
also
with toys for a living. If you look at what I do, I play with toys. I love toys. I'm a gadget guy.
and I'm a high paid babysitter. I think so.
There you go.
One of the great things though about 24, I mean, I'm on a show now that's getting critical acclaim, but there's nothing better than getting rewarded for all your hard work when people watch your show. And we were the first show to go straight to DVD for a TV series. 24 was also the last network show to win an Emmy for Best Show. And that was like 12 years ago. It's great when you can work on something that people actually watch and love. And for a brief moment, people thought Jack Bauer was real. I mean, they were teaching a course in Washington, D.C. about counterterrorism. And so that's,
the character has
that's
been referenced. Referenced on the floor of Congress.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
there is some, it's amazingly cool about that. And not everybody gets that opportunity in their career. I mean, people get to do cool shows and do things, but
I think the pop culture that we're part of now is solidified.
I mean, we're not doing video, but I have a Jack Bauer doll in my house. You know?
I got one.
I have
Yeah.
You guys, let's talk a moment. Let's not move on completely without sort of addressing the fact that there was, talking about sort of pop culture and political culture at the time, there was some controversy around portrayal of Muslims and the use of torture. People can look that up. There's a lot of discussion about it, a lot written on both sides. Did that ever affect things on set? Like, how did that come back to you guys in a way? What was the impression of that?
I would say we were an equal opportunity. We killed everybody. It didn't matter. Every season, it was the Chinese, the Russians, it didn't matter. We were equal opportunity terrorist getters. At some point, at the storyline, you think, it would be different telling that same story today, being as how everything's so sensitive. We were at the forefront of this before the sensitivity got to where it is now, this boiling point, that you could say things and do things and kind of got away with it. The only thing we ever got in trouble for was killing a dog on set with the shotgun. That we had more people get on us about that than taking a dude's head off with a hacksaw.
Because we remember, I think it was in season 2 where we shot somebody. It was actually a great exit wound on stage, and it was an effect, and they actually aired it. Nowadays, they don't. Everyone's so sensitive. You can't air anything. It's almost kind of taken the fun out of the job. It's like, come on. We're doing cool stuff, and they won't let us air it. It's like, then don't write it.
It's changed definitely a bit. It's definitely changed as far as what you can say and do, and people don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I think that sort of changed, because back then we would make it, shoot it, and then see what they would come back to us and say, you might want to take 4 seconds off that scene, make it 3 seconds so it's not as violent. Nowadays, they don't even want to approach it. Even on set, they're like, well, let's just not do that because I know they're not going to air it anyway. Yeah. So I think the times have changed a bit as far as what the writers and directors envision, and then actually what we actually show. It's definitely, your show, Nicole, you can get away with a lot more because your show's about trauma and things. So you kind of want to see the trauma. Right. Ours is more about, 24 is more about, the counter-terrorists, the violence and that kind of stuff with explosions, and sort of we got away with it because no one was doing it at the time.
Right.
But, I think even, going sort of talking about the portrayal of certain ethnicities or religious backgrounds or whatever, I think there was also amongst us on the crew in the space, again, because of the proximity, which was big, you knew there was a trust in Joel and Bob that they weren't looking for cheap answers or thrills thematically or narratively, that they were using these devices, but not in a cheap way. I think we all had a very inherent trust that Kiefer, in his portrayal of his character, was going to be true for him as an actor, and so you trust that, and so you're not sitting there on set going, "Wow, like that's just offensive and has no value." Right? It had value. Well,
they asked
and was treated, and it was treated with respect. And we all knew we were making an action show, but in terms of that, I never felt that I had to compromise what I think, right, in the name of making what we were making. And I think that's important, is that, it's such a touchy space, and now sort of more than ever, but you have to sort of look at what's being done and how it's being done and why. And I really think that from a creative standpoint, there was an honesty. There was also, like, Kiefer was Jack Bauer had huge fallibilities, right? I mean, he was not a perfect man. So I don't think it was ever about this guy's perfect and these people are not, right? You had to make choices as a viewer, and they made choices as creative choices as to, everybody's got some dark side. Everybody's got to make some choices, and even the character didn't always make the right choice. And so I think that allowed for there to be a respectability to the stories we were telling, And I think that what's happened now is that people, the space for discussion about it has been so reduced that you don't even really get to have those conversations.
Well, so the prism now that you can look through now has gotten a lot smaller.
It's minuscule.
You sort of have to touch on the exact subject you want to touch on and get out quick before someone has a chance to come back.
Right. Yeah, snap the ball before they review the play.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
But no, and I really think that that's true, and I think that is also part of what happened because of the connection between the creative process and Joel and Bob being right there, all the way through producerially down to those of us who were showing up on the factory floor, as it were, every day and making it.
Yeah.
And I think we all, again, Kiefer more than a few times say, that doesn't work for me as a character. I mean, he would do it. Rarely did that happen when cameras were set up, but people were participating and people were mindful of that. And I think that's, shouldn't be lost. I know a lot of people don't get that because it's unique to being in the moment, but there was a lot of respect for what we were doing narratively.
Agreed.
Favorite memories, having kind of revisited the show for a little bit here. It's been some years. Scenes, people, events, teams, whatever. What comes to mind, guys?
I got to shoot on a nuclear submarine. I got to hug the reactor. I mean, there's moments on the show that 24's afforded. The doors, I would say, opened up for all of us. I mean, we shot in DC, New York, San Diego. I mean, it was a guy in his 20s. They put you on a nuclear sub for a week. I got to tell you, I was running around. I have a picture of me sleeping on a Trident missile. I'm like, I mean,
it's This is before or after you had your kids, Sterling?
I would say mine was the F-18s, working with real F-18s, working with the military. We had the head people from Washington, D.C. come out.
NORAD.
We had the head lady from Camp Pendleton. We shut down the airspace at LAX. And we blew up a helicopter twice while the F-18s went into holding. I mean, that was by far my favorite day of my whole entire career. And then, sorry, Anthony, you didn't come with us, but Sterling and I and 7 other crew, including Kiefer took us heli-skiing for his 40th birthday for a week up in Canada. And that was
I learned to ski that week.
But I mean, I've been skiing now for 35 years. So back then it was 28. It was the best. We're going to do it again this year for my 50th.
Deep.
So start saving. It was deep.
Yeah. I mean, the camaraderie, it's tough to pick out a single moment when you've had so many. I mean, I would say one of the things that was super unique to my experience, and Nicole kind of touched on it, was working with the military. It's in our daily lives, it's such a politicized thing. And when you really get to see a little bit behind the curtain without actually having to join the military, but to work with those guys from top to bottom, whether it was the 18-year-old kids, in the submarine or the guys who would show up to do the fast roping out of the helicopters, you got to spend time with people and see them as people, not just part of this apparatus that you hear about on the news or experience it in other ways. And that was something that for me really sort of informed and changed and made me sort of grow, that you just don't get. You're just not going to get that. And those guys I found them always to be amazing in their professionalism and their attitudes. And so that was special to me.
I agree.
Because we on 24 from the beginning, when I know from season 1 when we were doing all the raids and stuff, we always used real SWAT guys, and Kiefer would always go, "Wow, these guys are really good." Well, yeah, they're real, and he would go, "Oh, well, then okay, well, yeah." I mean, one of the funniest days ever, which wasn't really funny at the time, but it's funny now, and I take it with me on every show I go to, was we had a gurney. Didn't want to work. Gurney. And if you're not a real paramedic, and especially now today, the gurneys are very heavy and they're tricky, and you have to click them and push them into a ambulance. So this one night, gurney does not want to work. I got 2 guys that have no idea how to use this gurney. So Kiefer goes, "Nicole, I'm going to go sit over here, play some chess. When you figure out how to use that gurney, let me know." So we're like, who can we dress? We'll dress the medic. Sterling knows how to use a gurney. We spent like an hour. So the director comes to me and says, "We need to shoot." And I said, "Well, you should go talk to Kiefer because we don't know how to get the gurney to work." And he walks over to Kiefer and he comes back and goes, "Shit, we're not working." And it literally took us an hour to get 2 people dressed to work this gurney. So from that moment on, I always have real paramedics on whatever show I do, because you know what? The gurney doesn't work. And
don't lie on your resume that you can play a paramedic is what it boils down to. Playing one and being one are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Ain't that was part of it. Because I played a paramedic before, but you use the gurney? No, then you can't. You should probably just wipe that out of your resume.
The gurney never works.
No, that was a classic. That was a classic night. That was a classic night.
It's funny listening to all these stories, though, because it is like a yearbook now. Going back, the fond memories I have of 24 and experiences we did together. I think they're great. I mean, just thinking about the F-18s flying down the LA River, and then you've got oil derricks at the out in Santa Barbara, and then the one we shot down in the studio,
Santa Fe Springs, down at the studio, yeah.
All that stuff. I mean, I look at it and I have this nice little grin. I miss those days. I enjoy those days, and I appreciate those days. What they taught me, for what we did and how we did it. You forget about the bad of like the not sleeping, the tired, and fatigue, which is normal for any job.
Yeah.
You only remember the good. And that's the great thing about 24 is that you look back at it, and if you were to put all those seasons together and put the amount of work that you put into it and heartache and just the amount of energy, you don't worry about that, and you go, I love it. The best.
I tell you what, though, I couldn't do it now. Now that I'm 15 years older, I wouldn't want to do it.
You could do it.
It was
Just
the
do it.
perfect.
You're doing it now.
Yeah.
Sort of am, but not as.
You're in Big Bear 2 days ago, and now you're in the desert day after. I mean, come on, you're doing it now. You're fine.
Well, with these, when they talk, they're always talking about bringing 24 back. And I know none of you were involved in the sort of the spin-off seasons or the follow-on work that they did, either because of location or timing. But what would it take, you think, to bring a show like this back together?
Kiefer and Shooting Town.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but why? I mean.
Yeah. That's the question: is why? Why do it?
It's like leave it as it was. It was like, can't we come up with anything new?
No, we can't.
It ran its course. It was one of the best shows.
We're going to do a remake of Die Hard.
Leave it alone.
Well, and on that note, we'll leave this podcast as it is. Why try to make it any better? We'll let it stand as it is. Guys, this has been a lot of fun talking about this show.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Time, guys. Take care. And and have fun on all your not as good shows.
This podcast, but I would say it just shows you how much we all appreciate and love 24. You could probably ask any one of the crew and cast members who worked on 24. It probably holds a special place in their heart, and it holds one in mine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo that.
Thanks,
guys.
Well,
thanks, Kid. All right,
guys.
Yeah, right on.
Bye.
That was interesting. If you also enjoyed the episode, please take a moment and leave us 5 stars and a comment on iTunes. Fan of the show? Check out our Facebook page at Podcast Below the Line. For Twitter and Instagram, you can find us at Pod Below the Line. And if you've got feedback, send email to skid, S-K-I-D, at belowtheline1word.biz. That's B-I-Z. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music, and thanks to John Wan for our logo. Fan of the logo? We've got merch. You can get the logo inscribed on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Just go to redbubble.com and search for Below the Line. Next episode is about The Majestic, starring Jim Carrey and directed by Frank Darabont, and a film on which I worked as an additional second AD. It'll be fun catching up with some of my crewmates, and I hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks.